Yup, we're going there because of all the discussion about offer sheets over the past few days. We are now starting to see articles pop up in different corners of the internet talking about other names on the market that could be offer sheeted too. These guys are still unsigned at the time of recording this audio, but things can change very quickly, and for now, while these guys remain unsigned, we can have our fun and have our discussions and make our videos and read the articles. Let's go out there and talk about a piece published on Philadelphia Hockey Now by Jonathan Bailey. Flyers, top remaining NHL offer sheet candidates. This will be linked in the description. It was published yesterday. And of course, it is on Philadelphia Hockey Now, so it's attacking the idea from the perspective of the Philadelphia Flyers making some sort of a splash. The article talks about the Oilers situation, Broberg, Holloway. It's been taken over the news cycle right here. And while there are two other guys that are listed in this article as potential offer sheet targets, I wanted to skip to the very first one. Let's go out there and read what Jonathan Bailey writes about their number one target, Matty Beniers of the Seattle Kraken. Last, but certainly not least, we turn to who was once the hopes and dreams of the Kraken franchise. Once? What do you mean once? He still is, man. What? Drafted second overall in the 2021 NHL Draft, Matty Beniers was thought to be the number one two-way center of Seattle's future, but the 21-year-old just hasn't put all the pieces together yet on a Kraken team devoid of top-tier offensive talent. After scoring 24 goals, 33 assists, and 57 points in 80 games in his first NHL year in 2022-2023, Beniers took a major step back last season, finishing the year with only 15 goals and 22 assists for 37 points in 77 games, after being tasked with tough minutes offensively and defensively. Beniers is a decent enough skater whose shot is still coming along, but he has outstanding defensive instincts and is a willing and efficient creator of offense. Beniers' main issue offensively is that he can't do it all by himself, but on a Flyers team that flaunts talents like Tippett, Konechny, Mishkov, that won't be an issue. Beniers is likely to cost the Flyers an arm and a leg, but if the Kraken choose not to match a potential offer sheet, it could pay off in spades down the road. So today we are talking about the second overall 2021 draftee, Matty Beniers, and the idea of the Philadelphia Flyers of all teams signing him to an offer sheet. Now, I didn't actually realize that Beniers was still unsigned, but that is indeed the case here. He doesn't have a contract for 2024 and beyond. 21 years old, 6'2", 174, coming off of his ELC, and as the article stated, he did have a pretty significant sophomore decline. I'm not going to go out there and say that this is going to be permanent. I think a lot of players from even just Seattle in general declined from 22-23 to 23-24. The team just was not as good as they had been. They were not as cohesive as they had been. And honestly, it's tough for me to look at any individual player, especially when he was as young as Beniers, he's only 21, and be like, oh yeah, this has been a really bad development, he's going backwards, he's getting worse. Like, no, there are growing pains with these things. The whole Kraken team suffered from point reductions, and the team didn't make the playoffs this year. They were a second-round team last season. They beat the reigning Colorado Avalanche in the first round in 7 games. Like, that's crazy. That's a great team. They just had a bad season this previous year. Everybody did. So I don't really think it's fair to think of Matty Beniers as a player who's getting worse or who could use a change of scenery or whatever. Like, I'm not saying that's exactly what the article said, but I feel like that's the implication. That's the feeling here. Hey, Beniers had a bad year, therefore he could be an offer sheet target. I don't really think that's all too realistic in this situation, but alas, let's go out there and talk a little bit more about this. Matty Beniers, I will say at one point he was probably supposed to be the number one center in Seattle. When he was drafted second overall, there was always this sort of attached label to him, oh, future elite center, two-way guy, but you have to also talk about the nuance behind these things as well. When you go over first-line center, you normally think of a certain type of mold. A lot of points, a lot of responsibility, a lot of minutes, a lot of pace. And while Matty Beniers, if he goes best case scenario, he could be in a similar vein as a Jonathan Toews or a Patrice Bergeron, I think back in the 2021 draft season, there weren't too many people going out there and intrinsically saying, yeah, Beniers was guaranteed to being that. He is going to be the next Bergeron. I feel like it was a lot safer with Beniers. some of the sentiments that we had shared on this YouTube channel as well were more so like, hey, if Beniers becomes your first-line center, that's probably a really good option, but if long-term he is your second-line center, if he maxes out to his potential while playing on the second line against lower competition and with limited minutes, then you could have a really, really stacked center core if you have a dynamic, absolutely brilliant first-line guy who can produce a ton of points and a two-way monster in Beniers on the second line. All it took was 2 years for the Seattle Kraken to draft Shane Wright, and all of a sudden, boom, that became the idea. It was no longer Beniers number 1, it was Wright 1, Beniers 2. And heading into the long-term future, it seems like that's going to be more so of the plan. Again, I like this idea. But if you were to think about Beniers as a guy who is in a more vulnerable spot because of his bad season, it might be worth it to think about an offer sheet. It's just the question as to whether or not this Seattle Kraken would be in a spot to match it. And honestly, I do think that they would have themselves that opportunity. Part of the reason the Edmonton Oilers got so caught up with the Broberg-Holloway stuff is because they got no cap space. I mean, go over on the Puckpedia. Their cap hit right now is $95 million. They have projected space of $7.23 million. That is with Evander Kane still on the lineup, so everything is a little bit messed up there, but the Seattle Kraken, they have $6.37 million in available cap space right now. So if you were to really, really push it, if you wanted to give Matty Beniers a contract, an offer sheet that he cannot refuse, then you'd have to go into, let's say, first-round pick compensation territory. And even then, you'd have to exceed the Seattle Kraken's available dollar amount of 6-point-something mil and really overpay for what it is that Beniers could give you. At the end of the day, Beniers still is a young enough player, and he is coming off of a bad enough season where if the Kraken decide to give him, let's say, a 3-year, $4 million AAV deal, I think that's really, really fair. So if a team like Philadelphia wants to go out there and push for an offer sheet to happen, they would have to ramp up that dollar amount so much that it would be out of the price range of the Seattle Kraken to match, and it would be enough for him, Beniers, the guy himself, to actually sign it. Remember, offer sheets are only signed when the player actually signs them. They have to choose to say yes. So at the end of the day, while it would be really, really interesting to have a guy like Matty Beniers playing alongside a Matvei Michkov and eventually a guy like Tyson Forrester or whatever, Owen Tippett, Beniers, Michkov sounds like a great line. If you had Cutter Gauthier still on the team, that would be awesome. I do think this is probably not going to happen, and even still, I mean, the Philadelphia Flyers have, what, $830,000 of cap over the limit? So this team is not going to get it done, man. Really? Like, I understand the perspective of the article here, but let's try to be realistic. So either way, you could let me know your thoughts in the comment section below about the idea of a Matty Beniers offer sheet, and if something like that is really worth thinking about at this point in his career. He still is unsigned, so I don't want to dismiss it entirely, but at the end of the day, this is one of the 3 names that are talked about on this article. Link is going to be in the description if you want to read more about the other 2 from 2 separate teams. But Kraken fans, Flyer fans, let me know your thoughts in the comment section below about Matty Beniers. I hope you enjoyed this video, and bye.